And we are live. I was just looking at my little icon there to tell me that we are live. Very good evening to you from London. I'm Nadine Parry, executive coach and workplace mediator. Lisa?
Oh, hi, I'm Lisa Grace, and I'm in Abu Dhabi. Kind of waiting on my turn. I'm in Abu Dhabi. I'm the editorial director of Teach Middle East magazine. I think I've just made my first blooper on this program. It's my pleasure to be here. I'm a former school leader, principal, and now I work sort of in the complementary side of education in publishing and ed tech. And it's lovely to be here.
Great.
And we're very, very, very pleased to have you with us tonight, Lisa. Jenny?
Lovely to be here.
Hi, I'm Jenny Ling. Sorry, my mind just went completely blank. Can you believe it? What am I? I'm a leadership development expert, primarily in education, and I facilitate leadership programs.
Thank you.
Hi there, I'm Jan Baines. It's great to have you with us, Lisa, by the way. We've been looking forward to this.
Thank you.
I'm a freelance education consultant. I do some school inspection work, some MPQ quality assurance work, some leadership development stuff, mostly in schools and charity sectors. So that's mostly what I do at the moment. Good to be here.
My name's Nick Sheriff. I was a school inspector. I'm likely to be doing school planning, school improvement from now on, and a bit of educational consultancy. And yeah, Lisa, it's great to have you here.
Thanks.
So it's a great topic today because we had been talking about having a discussion around education for a while, and we were hoping to some extent that situations around the world would be better and that schools would be back on track, and it's not the case. So we thought, well, we're going to have to talk now about schools and leadership and what's happening there. And we thought that today would be a great opportunity to invite you, Lisa, in your role as the editor of a magazine, but also as an ex-principal, because we know you have a huge network. And you can perhaps, share with us what people have been experiencing and have been living. You're in the Middle East. We're in London, actually. Jan, Jenny, and myself, we're in England. So it will be good to put a kind of global hat on the discussion that we're going to have. Yeah. So the situation in England in terms of education is very difficult. Schools are closed to most students, except to vulnerable students and to children from critical workers. There was an announcement yesterday from Gavin Williamson when he went to speak to the Education Committee, where he mentioned that there wouldn't be any exams, but there would be some kind of sitting external exams in schools that would be set by exam boards. So we're yet to hear what that's going to be looking like. We're now, thanks to, I would say, Marcus Rashford, we're kind of, we're moving forward with the national food voucher. So that apparently is going to be happening next week. We've had some statistics, whatever they mean, about equipping disadvantaged children with laptop, because that's a real issue. And again, Gavin Williamson promised schools that by the end of this week, they would send 750,000 devices to school by the end of this week. So we're looking forward to tomorrow. Then we've got this mass testing with COVID in primary schools, I think starting next week. We're not quite clear about what's happening in terms of vaccination for school staff yet. And we've got a number of key people, the like of Jeff Barton at ASCL, the NEU, we've got Ofqual, all talking together, trying to find ways forward for the crisis that really we're in. So we thought it would be a good place to start outlining what's happening. and looking at, okay, so what are the leadership priorities for 2021? We've all been ahead. It doesn't mean we know it all by all means. We're still learning, you know. But what would be those leadership priorities?
Should I start off?
Yes.
Yeah,
You're the VIP.
Yeah, because I think it's such a big question. There are so many priorities right now. For me personally, I genuinely think well-being is going to be the number one priority for leaders, trying as much as they can to see about the well-being of the students and the staff in their care. I think everything else comes secondary. I think where we are right now in this pandemic that we thought would by now be on the finishing leg, but seems to be raging harder and harder. I think forget about exams, well-being, taking care of the people that are in your care. Go right down to the bottom of the hierarchy of needs, and let's start there. Are they fed? Are they sheltered? Are they okay? And then we can start even to begin to think about exams. I think on LinkedIn, I talked about how much I dislike the fact that they're trying to push this exam agenda still. But, I think scrap all of that and start to look at how can leaders help in taking care of the well-being of the people in their care. And then who's taking care of the leaders, because they need care as well. I think that's where we need to look at, just basic care.
Yeah, absolutely.
How would you expect that to happen? Because I totally agree with you, Lisa. I think this focus on exams is the wrong focus. But unfortunately, we're in a system that is exam focused. You take your exams at certain times and they give you a passport to go on further. I totally agree about well-being being the most important, bottom of Maslow's pyramid. Don't worry about higher up. But there needs to be such a fundamental cultural shift in everybody's understanding of what should be happening in education. It distresses me to see people saying they're 2 months behind. They're talking about primary children or secondary. They're 2 months behind, or they're so far behind. Well, stop the clock. Let's actually put this year to one side and focus on what's important this year. Sorry?
What are they behind? I'm a mother of 2 8-year-old kids. What are they behind, really? Because we've set standards and we've decided at some point, well, I wouldn't even put myself in that. Someone somewhere decided long time ago, these were the standards. Yeah. Now, if they decided that, they can make another decision and we can have another set of standards, be it temporarily or what. But we definitely can't be trying in this kind of turmoil to stick to standards, especially with the upheaval with schools. So you're right, Jenny. Let's change the standards then. We can't we?
Yeah. And look at, flip it. What are children gaining this year? The relationships with parents, which I know can go either way at the minute because of the demands of homeschooling. But the demands of homeschooling in themselves, it shouldn't be around worksheets. It shouldn't be around the things that would happen in a classroom. It should be around the things that can happen in the home. And I think that parents need some reassurance that what they're doing, taking them out for a walk and observing what's going on is far more important, I think, than sitting down to do a worksheet to get them up to level 3.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
But I think it depends on the age of the children, doesn't it? Because as parents, you feel you have a responsibility to kind of fill some gaps that are there, and you almost become a teacher every day. I was talking to a client of mine this morning, and she said to me, I've got 4 hours of sitting with my 2 kids and basically teaching them, and she's having to put aside her work and navigate that. So that's the first thing. So it's about making sure that you are saying to your children, but you have a balance where clearly you're not going to be replacing what would have happened at school, you know, and accept it. And sometimes less is better.
Yeah.
Because, you know, we hear a lot about parents who are exhausted. You know, relationships are quite difficult. No matter what background you have, it is challenging. And it is also challenging to see children facing what's happening, you know, around the world. So for me, it's not about the quantity of work that is being done every day. If they're behind, then as you say, Lisa and Jenny, well, they're behind, but it's also about the well-being of, you know, what's happening in the family. I guess the point I'd like to make when we talk about well-being and how we can do that is, you know, as a leader yourself, how much do you know about ensuring that your staff well-being is done to the best, and how do you deliver that? I think that can be quite challenging depending on where your staff are. I mean, some schools are functioning with, you know, 40% staff off. Some staff are in, some staff are out of school, teaching home. So it's challenging to ensure about the how you can deliver this well-being, you know, well-being hat that you want to have. It's how do you do that when you were not prepared for that? I mean, you know, with due respect, I think most of us will have done NPQ, NPQH, and I mean, certainly when I did my NPQH, I would never be prepared for, and you know, that was a long time ago, you know, but I would never have been prepared for that. So in a way, you have to listen to your intuition. You have to listen to what you know. You have to draw into your experience, in your expertise, and you have to learn, you know, but you also have to look at what's happening around you and looking at some of your colleagues and what they are doing. I know of a lot of head teachers who are working together to support each other. And by doing that, they're also supporting their staff. They're kind of sharing good practice, but also supporting each other. And I just want to say, I mean, I'm talking a lot here. I just want to say that there is one head that I follow on LinkedIn. He's called Alan Osborne. I don't know if you know him. He's an exec head from Bridge Academy Trust, and he posts every day. I mean, his values are very strong. It's about being authentic, and he's a servant leader, and he's, you know, every day he's celebrating what people are doing well. And I did contact him, and I did say, I've got a LinkedIn Live, and I'm going to really put you on stage because I think what you're doing is amazing. So he will know that we are talking about him. But it's, you know, it's so important to, whenever someone is doing something great about well-being, then, you know, put them on stage and celebrate. I've spoken for quite a long time here, but I feel very strong about that. So Alan Osborne, well done, and, you know, keep going, because you are a real inspiration to many people and many heads.
Lisa, you know, at the start when Nadine introduced this session, she she painted a picture of the situation in the UK. Did that resonate with what you know is happening in the Middle East?
Well, no, it's different. If you're in Dubai right now, you have the option of, for the last 2 weeks when school reopened after the winter break, you have the option of being in school full time, or some schools have a hybrid model, and some students have chosen to continue distance learning. So that option is there. Abu Dhabi, my sons have been at home distance learning for this first 2 weeks, and then next week they can be back in school if I choose to send them in. So to be honest, the situation has been handled here much better than home. I mean, I can't, I mean, I hate to do the comparison, but let's just say I'm happy that I'm here. That's all I can.
I mean, what was behind my question wasn't to embarrass anybody or put anybody on a pedestal. It was just an opportunity to tease out what might be the features of a system that's adapted well, and is allowing people to. So just to take that and make it sort of specific, just quickly. So what I think you've described as a system where people have the opportunity to make a decision as to whether they engage in distance learning, or whether youngsters go to school, or whether they do a bit of a blended model. Is that what?
That's exactly it. Yeah. So parents were given the choice back in August.
Okay.
To decide on the model based on what what school offered, and people chose, and a lot of parents have chosen to send their children back to school, rightly so, if they feel comfortable in doing so. And schools were given certain guidelines, and they have to operate within those guidelines. But schools here have really stepped up. Like, I don't want to turn it into a praise fest for schools in the UAE, but I'm proud of them. Like, the teachers, they've done a fantastic job. At my boys' school, they have models. They have found ways to still allow them to do sport. They've found ways around music and art, and they've done a really good job. So I think what made it easier is that element of planning and choice.
Okay.
And I think we would echo that, wouldn't we? Because four of us were evaluating schools in Abu Dhabi last term, actually. Last term, 2020, summer 2020.
Yeah.
So UAE, and you did that in Dubai, Nick, didn't you? So in effect, Dubai and ADEC continued and looked at and evaluated online learning, in the summer 2020, and learned a great deal from that. And it wasn't done to them. We were working with school principals and, celebrating what they had put in place so quickly. We have to acknowledge what's been done in schools there. Nick, you're very quiet.
I think Nick might frozen.
So maybe
the line to the Middle East or to Dubai in particular is.
So maybe Nick isn't here because he looks like he's not moving at all. So yes.
Lisa, can I just ask about this, because it fascinates me that given the choice, what are parents doing? Is the general feeling that schools are safe and therefore they'll send their children in? Right, because I think here people feel they're not safe. And I think that although it might be safe for the children, I think that educators are tending to say that there are challenges around teachers, and the lack of priority for the vaccine for teachers is very much in social media at the minute, because unless the teachers are vaccinated as a priority, then schools can't function as they have done. But from what you're saying is your teachers are in schools. Is there known to be quite a high level of absenteeism due to COVID? Do you know?
No, I don't. I wouldn't be able to. I don't know of there being. I'm not that close to a school. I would only know about my kids' school.
Right. Okay.
I don't think so, because the boys, their teachers have been in throughout.
Yeah, Nick might know.
Nick,
if I'm back.
Yes.
Am I back? That's good.
Yes, you are back.
The other thing I wanted to say is the standards thing. My daughter's 17. I think you have to be careful you're not talking from a parent point of view, because she wants standards. She's worked really hard in a system that's all about standards. And of course, it's very easy, I think, and I agree with you, by the way, but I can see this other side where it's very easy to see school in isolation to the rest of society. And if you suddenly say, let's put school standards on hold, the danger is it's such a knock-on effect that activity will be felt somewhere. And if you like, we haven't got universities on board. We haven't got other elements on board. I think government schools here now haven't gone back. So they're pretty much 100% distance learning, but they have an amazing central LMS system, which is the envy of schools in the UK. And it makes things a lot easier. I would agree with Lisa. private schools have stepped up here really well, but they've got a lot of money, a lot of real estate. They didn't really drop fees very much across the board, and parents are getting a different experience with the school, but they're still paying. My daughter regularly complains of the standard of her lessons. So it's different. But at the end of the day, you know, if you've got the internet and you're motivated, you can work with maybe not a perfect system. But I do feel at the bottom of the school, what early years, KG, that it's the parents that are to be commended, because they've had to step in and be that pseudo teacher and help out. So I think that's been amazing. But I know what Lisa's about over here. I mean, it's not perfect, but it's functional. It works. Broadly, people are happy. There's choice. My daughter was saying, why can't I take exams? I can take exams. Why are we not taking exams just because the UK can't take exams? So in a strange way, it's created a bit of a tier system. But from my work publicly, we've got large chunks of the country who don't have access because they don't have the equipment. The internet's not great everywhere. And that is extremely debilitating for some families. But I know schools that have popped stuff in the post, mailed things out, gone round on a bike to someone's house to sort of drop a box of things off. So I think the effort is second to none. I think the idea of, you know, we have this thing, education by the date of manufacture, which we probably, if we're going to challenge work and working practices, is it too much to think that we would challenge, you know, the traditions of schooling now? Maybe it's time we can talk about it in a more sensible fashion.
You know, the thing I wrote when Lisa was talking before, and it kind of links, it links what Nadine was saying with her description of a mother who has a 4-hour session with her kids, and it also links with the well-being. If we come out of this and we haven't taken the opportunity to broker some sort of reset within education, I think we will have missed a massive opportunity. If you talk to most teachers over the last goodness how many years, you know, there's things that the way that the education system has gone that haven't been cleverly thought through. And if only the authorities, and I can only speak over here because it sounds like this may have happened for you guys in the Middle East, but if only the authorities had taken the foot off the jugular or off the throat for school leaders and allowed them a little bit of breathing space and allowed them a little bit of time to be inventive, so that you didn't get people saying, well, it's a disaster. None of my class, or only 5% of my class, can get online, and give them the opportunity to be inventive and find other ways. You know what, use the radio, use mobiles, there must be all sorts of ways that we can adapt but somehow we've become paralyzed because we're not seizing those opportunities. And for that lady who's about to spend 4 hours at home with her kids, well, what a joy that could be. Well, you know, seriously, they're her children. I'm not saying that it's brilliant for everybody, but an opportunity to sit alongside your kids and understand their learning and watch them learning and be involved in that. So rather than it be a complete sort of head in a vice, how are we going to respond to this? Why don't we sort of look an opportunity to reset and get some positives? I don't know. I see some nods.
I'm nodding because I am agreeing with you, Jan, in terms of reset. I think if we miss this chance, we will not get it again. I don't think, not in my lifetime, certainly, because unless there's some other pandemic I don't know anything about, but fingers crossed. But the thing is, I think even and I understand what Nick is saying, because my nephew, he's in A levels and he's like, no, but I want to do my A levels and I've worked hard and why can't I do them? And I get it, but I think, all right, let's start with primary and early years. Let's say we're getting rid of SATs completely. And when you get to grade 10 and 11, you're not going to sit this. We're going to be assessing you right throughout, and you're going to carry a portfolio of work with you throughout your school years that's going to show how you've grown, how you've made good progress, how you've developed as a person, as a student, as a human being, right? And we've got the tools. We can develop those systems. Those portfolios can be electronic. They can move from one stage to the next. They can show build. And I'm an ed tech person, so I think there's potential everywhere with ed tech. And if you start that reset now, okay, your 17, your 16, your 15-year-olds may not benefit, but all your younger kids will, and that change will filter through. And I think we've got a golden opportunity to do this. So we should. I don't know what the powers that be are thinking. Oh, they're thinking, oh, when this is over and we're all vaccinated, we'll go back to taking exams. I really hope not. I hope not.
I think one of the challenges in the UK has been the lack of clarity of message. I mean, from what we saw when we did the virtual inspections in UAE, it was very clear what the expectations were, and you were given government support to do that from virtually the second day. Because I remember being in Dubai the day that the last day that schools were in before the pandemic. I was actually in a school then, and it was all the talk was about getting trained to go online. But unfortunately, in the UK, that hasn't happened. And I think that everybody's having to reinvent their own wheel. And I think that people are getting together, and there are academy chains and all sorts of maps and groups of schools. But nevertheless, there is no one system. I'm not suggesting there should be one system, but there still needs to be a clarity around the messaging. And I think that if you get clarity around messaging, then people feel more secure in what they're doing. But our government is all over the place. I mean, I'm not going to get political about it, but that's fact. And the messages that are coming out change day by day. The school's going to be closed because they're not safe. The school's going to be open because they're safe, and that can happen 3 times in 3 days. So I think that for the heads in the UK, the challenge has been back to what you were saying at the very beginning, Lisa, is about morale, motivation, and communication, because it's not coming clearly to them. So they've got to make the message right for the people that they're talking to, if that makes sense.
Filter, don't they? They're filtering as much as they've ever filtered in their life.
But
I mean, I always remember that when I was a head, I used to think I was sitting there with a tennis racket or something and batting back all the stuff that came, protecting my staff from all this stuff that came in. And I think even more that's important now. Can I just bring in Jamal, who some minutes ago has put a comment in here. Jamal is obviously in Jordan, and saying that the decision has been made that students will return to schools in February. Parents are given the choice to send their children to school or keep them at home and getting distance learning. So again, it's parental choice like it is in UAE, not categories as it is here.
Well, one thing to say, which is to be commended here, which maybe it's a bit of a cheat to say it's all about the education sector, is the Ministry of Health here and creating the bubble system and then the inspection system to go into schools with a degree of regularity gives parents a huge reassurance that sending their kids to these schools is in a safe environment. You know, the one-way systems, that is so important. I mean, it's easy to say, oh, we just go back. But, I think you need more of society to be all working in the same direction for this to work. And maybe that's what's not happening in the UK. It's not just about teachers and school leaders, is it? Other people have to get involved as well.
Jamal had sent me a question, and his question was, how can we effectively engage and motivate learners online?
Well, that's a brilliant question, isn't it? And I've been wrestling with that more, particularly recently, but I've also been wrestling with it all through my teaching career. I began teaching in 1984. So if you take the online bit off the end, because it's the classic horses and water, isn't it? You know, as in you can't lead a horse. You can lead a horse to water, you can't make it drink. But actually, is the job of a teacher to do that. The job of the teacher is to make them thirsty, isn't it?
Yeah, but you remember when we were looking at the online last in 2020 in that summer term. One of the things that we talked a lot about was the lack of interaction between students. You know, when, I mean, it was just the very beginning. So of course, you know, we would pick that up, and at that point it would be quite something that we could notice, the fact that it was quite teacher-led, and we didn't see much interaction with students, you know, not the kind of interaction that you would see in a classroom, but very quickly with training, that changed, didn't it? Which shows that actually, if we learn very quickly, and we can all do that, how we can use the technology, then we can do a lot more with students online, whether we're in the UK or anywhere in the world. Actually, you know, you can do great things on Zooms and on MS Teams and on Google Classroom, and I think it's about equipping the staff to promote social interactions, because students, and we all need that, don't we? I mean, everybody says that they are missing that.
Nadine, I think when people say, how do you get students to engage in online learning, look at what students are doing. I think I'm at an advantage because I have young children. My boys will spend all night and all day online if I allowed them to do that. Now, why? Why is that true? That's because what they're doing, they're interested in it. There's an element of excitement, there's competition, and they are definitely interacting with their peers. I don't know if you know this game. You might not. It depends on how old your kids are. It's called Among Us.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm big on Among Us. I'm really big on Among Us. Yeah.
I never know when you're joking.
No, you're not. You're not.
I don't think you are.
No.
But listen, for real. My kids would be on Among Us all night and all day if they could. But the reason is they are interacting with their peers on Among Us. It is a mystery. They have to solve problems. They have to guess and find and seek and all these things. And I think what's lacking in online learning is that we think we can replicate the classroom online. And kids are going to be so interested in watching their teachers talk to them on a screen. And I'm like, they don't want to see you in real life. You think they want to see you on a screen? But the thing is, you have to change the idea around online learning. We need to get the whole treasure hunt piece back into it, where the kids are hunting for their treasure and they're learning while they're doing it. Because what happens is, if we set them tasks and we put them in groups and we set the expectations and we set the parameters and the safeguarding pieces in place, they'll go out there and they'll learn and they'll find and they'll do. Because what we're trying to do is control the situation remotely, and that doesn't work for kids. They don't want to sit there and watch people's faces for that length of time. That's what we can do to switch it up. We can't replicate the classroom.
Well, and that's part of my reset. In fact, that's probably the major bit of the reset. is to stop being clamped into thinking that the only way that we can get learning to happen is by sticking an adult up in front of whatever format it is. And that isn't how it works. Learning happens in all sorts of incredible ways. And we know. I'm sure we don't know all of them, but we know lots of them. And we just need to allow that creativity to happen and come through, and then stand back and review and pick the best ones, and then support those who haven't quite got it yet.
Your question about what do leaders do? I think there's some sort of evolution to this. There was that great human effort of everyone doing anything, any sort of learning, and we've become quite sophisticated very quickly, and we realize just because you've got Teams or G Suite or Zoom, that tool in itself is not going to do anything.
No.
And we've moved from can I use the tool as is to realizing, oh, that's a business conferencing tool. That doesn't make you a great teacher tool.
No.
So
No.
my daughter's school, first of all, didn't allow them to have control or the interactive, all the functions. It's no, shut it down. The teacher will control the session.
Yeah.
And this year, they've given the kids their own teams. So she is having her own peer groups. You know, we've had the lesson, they go off on their own, do some work and come back. But not everyone has worked out and been comfortable giving that level of trust over to the kids, because they're so used to that didactic, teacher-centered experience that really this is letting go. And that's quite difficult for a lot of people.
Yeah.
But also, what a great opportunity we have to engage our students to design lessons with us. I mean, I've always loved to when I was teaching, I would always co-construct the learning with the students, and they would teach lessons, right?
Yeah.
And actually, they would teach me how to do it as well, because there were things I didn't know how to do that. And every time I would learn something from them. So co-constructing, I mean, I think now we've got a huge opportunity to co-construct with students to make sure that we keep their engagement and their motivation. But, you know, it's easy for us to say that because, I mean, it's okay for those students who have access to a computer, and we are back to, you know, what about those who actually do not have access to those computers? I mean, you've seen on BBC, you know, at least twice a week, they're showing families where there is no computer, there is no laptop, there is none of that, right? There's not even a phone line in the house. So we also have to be inclusive in how we are motivating and educating children while we are facing COVID-19. We must never, you know, leave children behind or aside.
I think maybe
Sorry.
I was just going to quickly say on that point. Sorry, it's really quick. The government did ask the phone companies in the UK, and a lot of them stepped up to give free access during the period. But if that was the case, what they could have opened schools to a particular group of people who had the need and couldn't access the online. And it's back to Jenny's communication point. They didn't really trawl the sort of student family population and get an accurate picture of what it is they were dealing with. I mean, we found access is an issue. And another thing, it's an issue of skills. We all thought the younger kids would struggle and the older kids would nail it. It's the other way around. The older kids seem to be the ones who really feel isolated and a bit nervous. So I don't think we communicated very well when we started this.
I think this issue about BT and whoever it is giving access is all very well, but unfortunately what happened about the same time, Nick, was the government then decided that anybody who didn't have access to any IT became vulnerable by definition and therefore could be in school. School numbers then went up to about 50%, but we didn't have staff to manage and maintain it. So they've moved the goalposts as to who can go to school with no notice to schools. And it's quite a difficult thing to verify. So anybody can go in and say, we haven't got a laptop at home, and send their children to school. So I don't think that's helped very much. But I think that what's astounding at the minute and what is so sad is that it's actually, you know, Boris goes on about levelling up, and there's always been this closing the gap. And I think that the gap has been exacerbated by this, partly through lack of IT, partly also perhaps through lack of parental skill in being able to support their children's learning. And also there's a big fury about school meals. And even though Marcus Rashford has come on board and he's talked to Boris and they're going to come up with a plan, they're still saying there's not going to be anything for February half term. And it's actually quite shocking to be, you know, I mean, towards the end of my career, I've spent all my career in education and always been supporting the vulnerable. And then there are the level of vulnerability and the level of deprivation seems to me to be much higher now than it's ever been throughout my career. And I think that they're not being, those families, and it's the family, are not being picked up.
But it would be fair to say that it's been picked up by ASCL. I mean, Jeff Barton is talking a lot about it. He was on the news again last week. It's being picked up by unions. So it's not as if the government was not hearing a message. I mean, the message is going through. What is not happening is the actions from the government. So teachers and unions, and I know ASCL quite well because I was a member, and I know Jeff as well, and they are working extremely hard to. The message has gone through, but it's not. Nothing is happening at the pace at which we would like it to happen. And in the midst of that, you've got leaders from school who are having to navigate, because when you are communicating with the parents, well, what do you say to them and how do you say it? I mean, I've seen good practice where heads have decided now to be on video, right? So that they don't have to write anymore, but actually they're just being on video as we are today. And that requires courage to do that, because before it's something they would never have done. But, they're doing it. It doesn't make it any easier for them, but they are doing their best. And it's another way of communicating with parents.
Hitting all sorts of different levels, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's coming back to the communication point that you were making, Jenny, about, how do they communicate? Because if the communication message isn't clear from the top, then what do you end up saying in your letter and in your communication to parents? You don't want to repeat the same type of communication because you appear to be a very inept leader if you do that, because what we are told doesn't make sense anyway, because it changes all the time. And that is quite challenging when you're a leader, to measure how and what you're going to put in your communication and what channels of communication you're going to be using. What's the message? You've got to keep everybody going. And this is why I talked about Alan Osborne earlier on, because he's using social media in a really nice way where every day he's giving us example of the messages of thank you that he's receiving from parents, what the staff have done, the staff who are doing NPQ, what they are doing. I mean, he's keeping things going, and it's nice to see example of that, because it's too easy to criticize or to, keep on the bad news. We all know that, but I think having a hope, I mean, the importance of hope when we're in a crisis. And I think when you're a leader, a priority is to keep hope, to hope that the situation is going to improve. It doesn't mean to be unrealistic, but you have to be positive somewhere. Otherwise, you can't drive, people with you.
I'd agree the hope. I don't think all hope is lost, no matter how bad the UK is. I think there's a latency to this. I think everyone is mulling it over. People are moving to new positions in their mind. I mean, I was talking to a parent the other day, and we were moaning why the schools send us a flipping newsletter on email. Because so much of what the school does otherwise, it's like this, so much more interesting. So I think that seed is planted, and you wonder whether there'll be a bit of people power that they won't accept those old norms anymore, and they will be questioning. I mean, if someone was to pitch, we're going to revamp the education system, are people really going to be against it? I mean, in the past, the government might have came under some fire, but you get a feeling this is the time to do it. Everyone is going to be listening.
I think, unfortunately, we've got a very inept education secretary, and I think if he was in charge of anything, I don't think he'd have my vote.
You weren't going to be political, Jenny.
I'm sorry.
No.
But can I also just say about this hope? And I think that people, the governments may not have stepped up. Well, ours hasn't, but I think sorry, I'm not very political at all.
No, you're not, Jenny.
It's born out of frustration, I think, Jenny.
I get a total frustration. I cannot believe it. I'm even watching Question Time, which is just not my cup of tea normally at all. But I think the communities are stepping up, and I think that there are so many good things happening in communities. I mean, I've said before that where we live on the outskirts of Newcastle, it's quite a tough community. and the kindness and the generosity of people, helping people out, people, you know, just paying it forward, paying for people's shopping, having people delivering shopping, having donations, and having people offering services for free. It's heartwarming how the community here, and I'm sure that's replicated in lots of different ways, are helping to support the more vulnerable families in a way that I've never been aware of before. And I think, you know, we need to give lots of kudos to people who do that. Giving up old, I mean, I've still got an old laptop, which I just think, well, I might need it, but actually I should be like them, and I should just be giving that, because they're refurbishing them all. You know, because these 70,000 laptops aren't coming, they're refurbishing old ones, which is, you know, is fine. And I think we need to just acknowledge these communities and how great they've been in supporting people.
So,
I mean,
yeah.
I can say a specific thing like that wouldn't have happened unless we'd had lockdown. So my daughter's got selected for an online mentor group empowering women, where some very high-level business women and entrepreneurs and people that have been great in the public sector got together and did a huge Teams mentorship program. Now, that would have never happened, I don't think. You know, I can't, that would have been in some sort of theatre or lecture hall, and there'd have been problems with getting people there. But this happened quite organically, and those people gave their time and their advice. So I think I am quite hopeful. I can see that there's great things going to come out of this, different ways of doing it, and maybe better ways. I don't think just because it's not like we used to do it, that means it's not as good. I think it's too easy to think like that.
And many, you know, there are many head teachers who are actually doing their best and doing well. You know, it has trained them. That has been a very accelerated training for them, because they've been thrown in the deep end. And as I said, you know, no matter what qualification you have, it's not in the book to deal with what we are going through. You don't learn that. So they've had to improvise, they've had to respond. And many of them have been very courageous in the way that they've responded. And you know, this is why I think we're very grateful to them, because it takes a lot of courage to change your style of leadership. You know, you're used to your style, you have a style, and then you've had to change it. And this is not easy, because you have to drive all the staff and the students and the community, and you also have to evolve, you know, yourself as a leader. And yeah, it takes courage. Jenny, do you want to pick up Gulshan?
Yeah, I was just about to. Yeah, Gulshan has come in and saying, if this isn't the time to get political, then when is? Thank you. We're not in a situation. We are in the situation we are because not enough people take sufficient interest in politics. We need to understand how all the decisions that politicians take are going to affect our lives. So there's a vote.
I think maybe if we wait for politicians, we'll wait forever. And politicians, and maybe if I take Jenny up on her point, maybe they've not done enough, and maybe they've been dealing with other things, possibly. But I think other people have stepped up without the government. You know, Marcus Rashford's got on his platform, head teachers. We don't need government to do it. You know, the education system belongs to all of us, parents, teachers, kids. So I think if we wanted it changed, we just change it, don't we?
Well, you say that. It's not as simple as that, because it takes huge courage to go against when I mean that's ideally the case, but not really, because when you know as a head that you can be inspected, and you know, and people are, let's face it, that's not a pleasurable experience, and people have lost their jobs because of, you know, the way things have come out in a particular way. There just isn't enough of there's too much pressure, and I think politicians are frozen by the
ineptitude.
I think they're not frozen by their ineptitude, but that sort of feeds into the thing. They're frozen because they're under pressure in a situation that has never been they've never faced before, and there are a number of ways of responding, and I want to suggest that they respond by, I've talked about lifting foot off throat, and allowing people to explore the possibility of I keep saying about a reset, but they've not responded in that way. So I do agree that we could certainly put pressure on those who make policy and those who, but it's not a simple matter just to change it without.
But you know, professional bodies are doing that. ASCL is doing that. Jeff Barton is doing that. You know, they are talking to the government. I mean, you know, first day of term, nobody would know if the day after they would be at work or not. I mean, the news came very late, and you know, we must rest reassured that actually professional bodies were talking to the government. So it's not as if we're not. You know, the politicians are not told, they are told, but ultimately they make the decision and we're in their hands. And there is very little, to some extent, that people can do other than keep saying the same thing.
Right.
Until, you know, and it's about influencing them as well.
It is about influencing something,
Yeah. We have about 10 minutes left. And I was wondering, Lisa, I mean, is there anything, you are the editorial of the magazine Teach Middle East, is there anything that we could do, we could contribute to, you know, to help, to support what's happening? I mean,
you know, I think what happens is when things like this happen, the more we use our voices is how we're going to create any sort of impact. So I think what you all can do really is, like you're doing right now, Nadine, is to use your platforms, use your voices to say, this is what I think should happen, or this is the direction in which I think things should go. A lot of what is happening in the world is influenced by people's voices. Marcus Rashford, he used his voice to say this is, and no matter how small a platform you have, your voice matters to somebody, and they can then echo what you've said, and it becomes, you know, a swell. So what can you do? Use your voice, use your platform, talk about the things that matter to you. If Jenny wants to talk about the ineptitude of Gavin Williamson on her platform, go right ahead, because I think that would create a groundswell. I find him quite inept myself, if not to be political, right alongside Jenny. But I think if I made that much error, I would have been axed a long time ago as an education secretary. Can't see how he's lasted. But yeah, so what I'm really saying is use your platform, use your voice. You know, say something. If you've got principals that are doing extraordinary things, talk about them, make a little post about them, talk about them with your friends. If the way you think things should go is different from the way it's going right now, talk about it, write about it, speak about it, because I think if we all remain silent and wait for somebody else to do the talking for us, we might end up right back where we were before this pandemic. Listen, education does not change as quickly as people are talking. So people talk about, oh, you know, this is such a great time to change. Have you ever tried to move a house that's anchored in the ground? It's difficult. Education is anchored. It's a very anchored way of doing things. So what will you have to do? Bit by bit, undo the foundations. That's the only way to move it. So yeah, said a lot, but what I'm saying is use your voice.
No, good for you.
That's
while you're at it.
That's a good point. You see, I had in mind that we could, to some extent, and you've got experience of that, Lisa, perhaps organize a conference. You know, a conference about the lesson learned, but also, you know, the moving forward, the forward thinking. You know,
Are you in my brain somewhere, Nadine? Be careful.
I am. I don't know, but
a year. I have something coming up. A year on, we're gonna gather school leaders together. It's not an open conference for everybody. but it's going to be specific to school leaders, sort of like a way of getting everybody together and looking at leading the change. Because we talk about change in very abstract ways, and we pontificate and sound but what does it really look like? What is the change? Are we changing the way we teach? Are we changing the way we assess? Are we changing the way we use technology? Are we changing examinations? What are we changing in our schools? Because here's the thing, we talk about changing education as a whole, but every single piece of education comes right back down to the school and the classroom. So I want to unpack that and look at how are things changing on the ground? How are they changing in the schools? What are schools doing differently in light of what we've just gone through or are still going through, basically? And so that's a brilliant idea. So am I going to have Nick and Jan and Nadine on the panel?
Yeah, you are. Yeah.
We would be very excited to to be part of your event. I mean, equally, we could do something before. Jenny and I, we're doing a lot of work on change at the moment. We are creating a new change model, because all the research that have been done in terms of change are basing change on experience of the past. I mean, and nobody has ever experienced COVID-19, right? So it's really exciting to see the new change model that we can come up with, and perhaps creating it doesn't have to be a big conference, but perhaps
the idea was never a big conference. It's a free, what I was thinking more of is like a free event for school leaders, but specifically school leaders, because I think when we gather like-minded people together who have the same issues, we can really unpack, what's going on and really move the needle. So yeah, definitely would love to work with you ladies on that.
Well, that's
brilliant. Can I just bring in some comments? We've got Gulshan I hope I'm pronouncing your name right, Gulshan. He's coming in about, in spite of pupil premium for some years, 10 years of funding, pupil premium has made very little difference. We need to address poverty and deprivation can only be taken by the government. So the government needs to take the lead. There's lots that communities can do, but we do need a lead from the government. And then he's agreeing very much with you. He says, well said, Lisa, we need to use our voice, and also we need to teach our children how to access to and feed into all the democratic processes that exist, i.e. challenge their local public health report and the priorities in it if these do not include BAME health. So that's Gulshan, who is a trustee of a foundation in Suffolk, whose whole point is to address disadvantage. So thank you.
Yeah, it's a she, right?
It's a she. Sorry, I pronounced it perfectly, but I got your gender wrong. I apologize.
But isn't it
all the time?
But isn't it a point?
Yes.
The point that Gulshan is making is a point that we were making when we were heads. Those issues existed many years ago, and we keep talking about it, and not much is there.
Well, that's why I'm saying that this is a key moment of reset. They've existed for a long time. They've become very sharp now because of what is in fact a crisis. So it would be a travesty if there isn't space created. And I think your forum or conference or whatever you call it, Lisa, is an absolutely brilliant idea. I mean, it's not. I'm sure it's not a new idea, but I mean, it's with the focus and good on you. And absolutely, I will very happily support you in whatever way needed. I feel really passionately.
It's gonna be me, Nadine, and Jenny.
I think your word reset, I think, is a really good one, Jan, because when you reset something, it restarts it, but it restarts it with a memory. So it's not, it's not chucking the baby out with the bathwater, but it's actually moving forward with all the lessons that we can learn. Yeah. So I think reset is a really, and Gulshan's come back again. His conference is a great idea, and whether this is face to face or virtual, depending on when it happens, it would be really interesting to have it with the Middle East and with the UK. However, that could be.
Yeah.
I think so. The Middle East has done or made such a good fist of this
We can learn so much.
We absolutely have things to learn from that.
It's
And
different though. I think
of course
the
it
way
is.
it's been handled here is because of how the government is set up here.
Yeah, yeah.
And you know, without going into that whole debacle about why democracy doesn't work all the time, and
Yeah, of course.
without going
Yeah.
into all of that, I think we have lots to learn in the UK about how to really listen, how the government needs to listen
Absolutely.
to the people they serve, because right now I don't think they're doing too well at listening, you know.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's all about learning and picking the best and developing and finding things to suit your own society, your own context, isn't it?
And then communicating it clearly.
Yeah.
So we usually finish off with about 10 ideas that we've got. I guess the main point today will be about reset. I think it would be good to finish with just one point, which is
reset to make a fairer society, is what Gulshan has said, which I think is nice.
I could envisage a flower sort of shape with resetting in the middle, and then a series of little sort of bubbles or petal shapes around the outside, which are all a component of that process. What about that?
I think we should keep talking about what we spoke about today, and we should pick that up in a few weeks' time. So Lisa, if you're happy to be back with us in a few weeks' time, because I think it'd be good to have part two of today's discussions. There's many aspects that we didn't talk about. It's it's an hour long, and we
so quickly
past the hour. But Lisa, thank you so much for being our VIP guest today, and we all say yes to the conference, and we'll do what you want us to do. We'll have things to say as you know us. Jan, Jenny, and Nick, thank you so much for your contribution today. And we'll see you all next week.
Yeah, Lisa, thank you so much.
Thanks,
You're
Lisa.
welcome.
Lovely to
Thanks,
see
Lisa.
you again.
Take care.
Thanks,
Thank
everybody.
you.
Bye.